This chapter, we're going to be going over personal loans and simple interest. So first, starting off with the definition of a loan. A loan is something that is borrowed. Usually it's going to be a sum of money, and it's expected to be paid back with interest. There's two types of interest we're going to be looking at. The first one is simple interest, and then in the next chapter we're going to be doing, or the next section, we're going to be doing compound interest. So starting with simple interest here. Simple interest is based on the entire amount of a loan for the whole period of the loan. The formula that we're going to use for it is right here. It is I equals P times R times T. So when things in math, when expressions are written next to each other, that means multiplication. So this is P times R times T. I is the interest. It's the amount the borrower pays for using the lender's money. That should say borrower right here. And the P is the principal. That is the amount borrowed. R is the interest rate. We have to make sure that that is a decimal. It's usually going to be given to us as a percent. So to change it to a decimal, we have to move the decimal 2 to the left. And T is time, expressed in the same period as the rate. The most common type of simple interest that we're going to be using is called ordinary interest. And when computing ordinary interest, we're going to use what's called the banker's rule. The banker's rule says that a month has 30 days, a year has 12 months. And if we multiply 30 times 12, we end up getting a year has 360 days. So obviously this isn't completely accurate all the time. It's just an approximation, just kind of a set approximation. So when computing ordinary interest using an annual simple interest rate, if the time is given, for example, in 5 months, then the time we're going to be using is 5 divided by 12. If the time is given in 73 days, then we're going to use T equals 73 divided by 360. So essentially whatever we're given, we're going to divide it by that same time unit that makes up 1 year. So when we were given 5 months, we divided by 12 because there's 12 months in 1 year. When we were given 73 days, we divided by 360 because using the banker's rule, there's about 360 days in 1 year. Okay, let's do a couple examples here. Sherry needs to borrow $6,200 to replace the roof on her home. From the credit union, Sherry obtains a 30-month loan with an annual simple interest rate of 5.75%. And part A, we want to calculate the simple interest she's charged on the loan. So we're trying to find the interest, we're trying to find the money she needs to pay for borrowing the money. So let's go ahead and write down the formula. We know it's going to be I equals P times R times T. And let's write down our givens on the side here. P is the principal. That's going to be $6,200. That's the amount that is borrowed. R is the interest rate as a decimal. So as a decimal, 5.75% is 0.0575. So we had to take the decimal and move it 2 to the left from 5.75%. And lastly, T is the time, and it's given to us in months. So that means what we have to do is we have to do 30 divided by the total number of months in a year. So 30 divided by 12, and we end up getting 2.5. So let's go ahead and plug all of these in. It's going to be the interest that she is charged on the loan is going to be $6,200 times 0.0575 times 2.5. So I'm just leaving out units as you see for the money. I'll bring it back in the final answer. Multiply all these together. We get $891.25. So this number here is the simple interest she is charged on the loan. It is the money that she has to pay to borrow the money. Okay, and then the next question says determine the amount, principal plus interest, Sherry needs to pay the credit union at the end of the 30 months to pay off her loan. The total amount that she needs to pay back the principal, the amount that she borrowed, the $6,200, and she also needs to pay the interest. So it's going to be, the total amount is the principal plus the interest, and we actually know both of these. The principal was the $6,200. The interest we just found was $891.25. So we add all of this up, and we end up getting $7,091.25. So in order to borrow $6,200, she actually ended up having to pay $7,091.25 for after the 30-month period. Okay, let's do a couple more examples. Philip agrees to lend $850 to his friend, Joe, to help Joe travel to Cincinnati to attend a wedding. 9 months later, Joe repaid the original $850 plus $51 interest. We want to know what the annual rate of interest did Joe pay to Philip. And let's go ahead and write down the formula. So it's going to be I equals P times R times T. This time we are looking for the interest rate. So I'm just going to put R equals question mark just so we know that that's what we're looking for. And let's see what else we're given. He's lending $850. That is going to be the principal. That's going to be the amount loaned or the amount borrowed. And we know that T, it's 9 months. Since it's in months, we have to do that 9 divided by the total number of months in a year. 9 divided by 12 ends up simplifying to 3/4, which is 0.75. And lastly, maybe the trickier one here is the I value is $51. So once we have all of this, we're going to go ahead and plug it in. It's going to end up being 51 equals 850 times R, which is just R. So we leave it as R. I'll put it in parentheses. Times T, which is 0.75. So the way that we have to solve this, we have to multiply those numbers on the right together first. 850 times 0.75 gives us 637.5 times R. So we're looking for R. In order to find R, what we have to do is the opposite operation that's being done for that 637.5. 637.5 is being multiplied by R. So in order to get rid of that, we have to divide it off to cancel it, because anything divided by itself is 1. And then we have to do that to both sides of the equation. And we end up getting R equals 51 divided by 637.5, which is 0.08. So that's the interest rate, but we want this as a percent. Move the decimal 2 to the right, which is essentially multiplying by 100, and we get 8%. So we get R, the interest rate is 8%. All right, and now next example, do 2 more. To obtain money for new eyeglasses, Gilbert decides to pawn his trumpet. Gilbert borrows $240, and after 30 days, gets his trumpet back by paying the pawnbroker $288. We want to know what annual rate of interest did Gilbert pay. So let's go ahead and write down our formula so we can see what we need. So I equals PRT, simple interest. And we know that we are looking for R. We're looking for the interest rate. And we also know that he borrows $240, which is the principal. And we also know that the T value is 30 days. Since we are working with days, that's going to be 30 divided by 360. So once again, we're assuming that we're using that banker's rule with 360 days in a year. And I'm going to write this as a simplified fraction. You could just use 30 over 360. I'm going to simplify it to 1 over 12. So let's go ahead and plug everything in. We also have the interest that he paid. We still need that. So the interest, he paid $288 to get it back. And it was to borrow $240. So the interest there is the difference between them, which is $48. Let's go ahead now and plug them all in. That's going to be 48 for interest equals 240 for the principal times the interest rate, which is what we are looking for, times the time, which is 1 over 12. 240 times 1 over 12, that's the same as 240 divided by 12, which is 20. So that's 48 equals 20R. To get R by itself, we divide both sides by 20, and we end up getting 48 divided by 20 is 2.4, so R is 2.4. And as a decimal, we have to move that 2 decimal places to the right. So we get R is 240%. We move a 2 to the right, we have to fill in a 0, so 240%, which seems like a lot. All right, let's do one more now. Rodney owns a snow plowing business. He needs to purchase a new plow for the front of his truck, but does not have the $1,600 purchase price. The equipment dealership has 2 payment options. With option 1, Rodney can pay $800 as a down payment and then pay $850 in 6 months. Option 2, Rodney can pay $400 as a down payment and then pay $1,380 in 9 months. We want to know which option has a higher annual simple interest rate. Let's go ahead and do them side by side, and let's write down the formulas here just to, as usual, see what we need. So it's I equals PRT for both of them, and for both of these we are solving for R. Let's go ahead and see our givens. We know that we are looking for R. So I'm just going to put R equals question mark. We know that the principal here for option number 1 is we're going to be using that $800. If he pays $800 as a down payment, then the amount that he borrows is the total amount minus that $800, which is $800. So he does not borrow this $800 because he uses it as a down payment. So if he pays $800, there's $800 remaining that he has to borrow. So that's going to be P. And for T, this one is in 6 months. So that's going to be 6 divided by the total number of months, which is 12 for a year. That gives us 0.5. And then I for the interest that he has here. He ended up with a principal of $800, we said over here. And he had to pay $850 for that $800. That means the interest is the difference. So the interest is $50. He had to pay $50 to borrow that $800. So the interest is $50. And let's go ahead and plug all this in. It's 50 equals 800 times R, which is what we are looking for, times T, which is 0.5. 0.5 times 800 is 400, so that's 400R on the right. Divide both sides by 400 to cancel it on the right. And 50 divided by 400 gives us 0.125. So that's going to end up being, as a percent, move the decimal 2 to the right, that's 12.5%. And now let's do the same thing here for option 2. So using the same formula, and we're solving for R, and let's see what our given values are. So with option 2 here, you can pay $400 as a down payment and then pay $1,380 in 9 months. So once again, we're looking for R, so R equals question mark, and our p-value, he paid $400 as a down payment, and then he's paying $1,380. That means the amount he borrows is whatever is left over. So that's $1,380 minus 400. That gives us a principal of, oops, that should be the total amount. It's the total amount of $1,600 minus the down payment, and the amount that's left over is $1,200. So that was just the same thing as we did over here. The total amount minus the down payment. And then T, we have 9 months over the number of months. 9 over 12 gives us 0.75. And now for the interest rate. The interest rate, we're going to get that once again from the amount that he has to pay minus the amount borrowed, minus the principal. So it's going to be $1,380 minus $1,200, which is $180. Okay. And we can go ahead and plug everything in. I is 180. P is 1,200. We are looking for R, and T is 0.75. So simplifying the right-hand side, 1,200 times 0.75, that's going to give us 900. Divide both sides by 900 to solve for R. And that's going to end up giving us 180 over 900 is 0.2. As a decimal, that gives us, move the decimal over 2 to the right. We have to add in another 0, so that's going to end up being 20%. So option 2 has a higher annual simple interest rate, so he probably wants to go with option number 1. Okay, so that is it for simple interest.